Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Monster Fridays, Friday night. We got Marty, Coriander, and Killian with me. What's going on, y'all?
Hey,
Hey,
not
man.
much,
Hey.
not much.
All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about the late great Wes Craven's Swamp Thing from 1982, starring Adrienne Barbeau. Shout out, shout out. This is one of those movies we've been talking about this one for a little while, so I'm glad we're getting a chance to talk about it tonight. Before we begin, let me see who we have in the chat, and then I'll ask you guys your quick take on the movie before we begin proper. We have Patrick. Patrick's in the chat saying, "Hey, Night, Coriander, Killian, and Jerry. I love this movie." Oh, God.
It is.
He's all about
movie.
Jerry. It is a good movie, Patrick. Goraphobes in the chat saying, "Oh yeah, gotta love Adrienne Barbeau." Absolutely, absolutely. We got Mr. Dan in the chat saying, "Been a while, need to see this again." Yeah, I mean, it had been a while for me as well.
Yeah.
It was. Patrick says, "I loved Adrienne in Escape from New York." Absolutely,
Yeah, she was great in that.
absolutely. Yep. Patrick was saying the TV series was great. Yeah, and we were actually, me and Kill, we were talking about maybe talking a little bit about that at some point, so we'll see. We got Biffers in the chat saying, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on?"
Okay.
Hey,
We got Strange Monkey in the chat saying, "Hey, what's going on?
Hi.
What's going on?" All right. Okay. So real quick, let's get a quick take before we begin proper. I'll start with you, Coriander. Let's just do a quick take on what you thought of this movie, and then we'll go to Marty and then to Killian. What do you think of this movie, or what do you think of when you think of Swamp Thing?
This for me is a movie that brings me back to my childhood. There's not too many movies like I can say like you and Killian have watched with your mom and dad. Well, this is one that I watched with my father as a kid. So yeah,
Oh, okay. All right.
it kind of holds its place there for me, and it's just a fun
Nice.
movie. I enjoy this movie. Yeah.
All right.
Ooh.
Cool. How about you, Marty?
um, it's a fun, cheesy flick. If Wes Craven was going to pick any character to do a comic book movie on, Swamp Thing would certainly be applicable because he's very much a kind of horror-based, DC-based character. Not without its flaws, but certainly has a lot of charm to it.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Kill?
I kind of actually agree with what Marty said. It's cheese, but it's good cheese.
It's good cheese.
It's good cheese. It's funny. It's definitely 80s, and it even also kind of has a throwback to like the 1950s monsters, kind of that pulp feel to it, and very watchable. Fun ride.
Yeah.
Good for you
Absolutely,
guys.
yeah. I agree with that. I hadn't seen this movie. I mean, it had been years and years, but I remembered it, of course, or at least the basics of it. And it was nice to revisit it. It's a fun movie. It's cheesy as hell, but it's one of those. It's like a comfort type of movie. You could just kind of put it on
Got that right.
and just let it play.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're a fan of Adrienne Barbeau, as all of us are. I mean, she's obviously the centerpiece of the movie, so it was really cool to see her in a vehicle where she was able to be the centerpiece. So it's a fun movie, it's an old school cheesy.
Ass too.
She did, I was going to bring that up too. She really did, and we'll talk about that. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that, Coriander. We got Junebug too saying, "Tell me a kind of proves that Wes Craven really did have range as a director and proved kind of how underrated he was." Yeah, absolutely. I think he meant Swamp Thing proved. Yeah. It really proved his range. He had a nice range. And when we did our Horror Icons episode about a week and a half ago, we talked about some other Wes Craven movies that weren't like horror, like a Nightmare on Elm Street type of horror. And he was very, very versatile. He really was. Gorophobe says, "Sure is nostalgic. Even David Hess is in there as one of the bad guys." Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so we'll get ready to set up for you guys in the chat. for you guys watching the replay. Sit back, relax. All right. Okay, let's get down to brass tacks. I think we got everyone in the chat, nice and cozy. Junebug did say it was definitely cool to see Adrienne Barbeau in more ways than one if you get the right cut.
Oh, geez. I was waiting for that.
Junebug. Oh, man. We got
man.
Frank. Frank's in the chat. I call my ex-wife Swamp Thing. Oh, man.
Oh, my
Now I know why he calls himself the harsh truth.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Patrick says, is this new intro? Yeah, man. I thought you were there when we debuted it. We debuted it last Friday. Yeah, it's a new intro, man. Yeah, it's fun. Strange Monkey says, one of the few Craven films that I have not seen.
Oh,
All right. Junebug, somebody has to be the stream perv. Oh man, you gotta love that. Oh geez. Okay, all right. So let's start this thing off. Coriander, I'll start with you. Let's talk about some high points of the movie or any story points that you want to throw out there. I mean, this film, like I said, it's cheesy fun. It's cheesy fun. What do you got?
It really is cheesy fun. And like, Marty was saying, even when it misfires, which it kind of does, quite a bit in a few of its scenes, it's still hard not to love it, regardless if, whatever the scene was that, you know what I'm saying. But
right.
It starts out pretty much right off. They're flying in. Adrienne's flying in, in a helicopter, going into the swamp. Right. Going to check out that doctor. What the hell is his name?
Holland.
Yeah, man.
Holland.
His invention, and it starts off pretty good. I mean, you got some great swamp views, and it's just the cinematography. It's pretty good.
Yeah. The cinematography started off really, like I said, you could tell it was a director that knew what he was doing and trying to work with what he had. You know what I'm saying? And they were really, look, man, I got a great image of Wes. They were really down in there in the muck, so to speak. There's Wes right there with his, his overalls and stuff, and right in the middle of the shit, so to speak. So Wes was awesome, man. Anyone that's watched this channel knows we respect Wes. Okay, Marty, how about you? Any other story points or high points you want to throw up? Because it did start off pretty nice, like Coriander was saying. The whole laboratory idea.
I'm gonna go a bit nerdy here. I've read the comic, and I think if anyone was going to play Dr. Holland, it would have been Ray Wise. Because if you read, say, the early EC comic or even Alan Moore's run from the 80s, you get the sense the template of Swamp Thing is this very compassionate individual. And Ray Wise, in the small time he's on screen, absolutely captures that. You feel that this guy is trying to make the world a better place. He cares about his sister, he cares about the environment, and he just hits the nail in the head in the small bit of time he's given.
Yep. Good point. Yeah, I totally agree. He definitely, he put it this way, he definitely, and again, I hadn't seen this in so long, so I forgot how little screen time he had. But when I saw him, I was invested very quickly. He was very charismatic. He was great. So how about you, Kil? What'd you think about the beginning or any high points or anything?
Well, one thought that came to mind also was sort of like what Marty was saying, as far as the human side of Swamp Thing. And, anytime we see these comic book movies, you got, he was a really good Bruce Wayne, but he sucked as Batman. Or he was a really good Batman, but sucked as Bruce Wayne. And I truly feel, especially with the kind of environmental message with this film and, things of that nature, and especially, sort of like certain runs of Swamp Thing, the comics, they really touch on the environment and the soul of the swamp, and it gets deep, and I feel that even for this movie to be like early 80s, Wes really wanted the actor portraying the human side of it to reflect it, so that when he does become the monster, or the hero, character, it still is reflected, and you can still see that humanity through all the makeup and through the facade of now he is the Swamp Thing, And I think they conveyed that very well.
Yeah. Definitely as a character. I mean, they definitely, because of course, once you get to Swamp Thing, you have someone else underneath, all of the, the outfit and all that type of stuff. But because of the strength of Ray Wise's performance, you follow it. You know what I'm saying? Where there's a lot of movies, especially from back in the day, you just don't have that type of connection.
Definitely.
Junebug says definitely location shooting is better than anything CGI could do. Yeah, that's very, very true, no doubt. Mr. Dan says Ray Wise, forgot about that. He's always good. Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely he was a good actor. He really is. He's a good actor. Slasher Fred says there was a cartoon series. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll throw it back to you, Coriander. Anything else that kind of caught you before the quote unquote accident in the movie? As far as I thought that he, again, we're talking about Ray Wise, but as the character, he really did seem to get a connection with
Adrienne.
Alice Cable, portrayed by Adrienne Barbeau. What did you think about all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because she instantly presumed that the chick working with him was his wife, but it was his sister.
Right.
So when she found that out, it was almost like, okay, he is available. So you could kind of see that she was interested then too. So I thought those two were really good together. And it's kind of, it's so bad at the end. I don't want to jump ahead, but when she's like asking him, stay with me and we can work together. And she's like, please. And you could just see that. Yeah, they definitely had something.
Yeah. Frank says, I loved this movie as a kid. Haven't seen it in years. Yeah, man. I mean, anyone of that generation or loved 80s movies, this is definitely a cheesy fun movie. It had I'm not finding the right words to describe it. You guys can help if you know what I'm trying to say, but it was one of those movies that, like Marty was saying early, there was some faults with it. There were a lot of different faults, and of course it's cheesy and it's an old school movie, but it had a lot of heart. Maybe, I don't know if heart's the right word, but it's just one of those movies that you can't help but like. It's just But
Wes had his heart in the right place. You got that right.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's exactly. You said it, Coriander. Wes Craven, his craft and everything helped elevate material that could have otherwise been really bad. Really bad.
Yep.
But how about you, Marty? What was going on after the big accident happens and that type of stuff in the movie? That's things kind of took a turn, so to speak, and we got to see how much of a bastard David Hess could be.
I like that as well. This movie was ballsy in the way that, like, you have David Hess, these goons, like, fucking attacking Adrienne Barbeau. They beat up a kid. They beat up this little fucking kid.
Did.
Helping Adrienne Barbeau. And it's just, it's like, I do like that they do kind of, again, I was going a bit nerdy. I think that Craven was kind of taking elements from the Vertigo DC comics, which, if anyone's read comics, the darker kind of ones. Preachers come out of that one, and John Constantine and stuff like that. So they did take the darker elements. I don't know if the kind of the tone was always like that, but that's what he was going for, and I gotta give him props for that. It wasn't a kiddie flick. It most certainly was not a kiddie flick, and that's what I gotta give him dues for.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. How about you, Kill?
Yeah, it's definitely not a kiddie flick.
Right.
And also, one thing that's funny is this is a comic book movie because it's based on a comic book character. And in the early 80s, there was no real rule book. There was no real playbook on how to do these movies. I mean, you had, some Superman movies. You had a Wonder Woman TV show. I think maybe even the Hulk TV show was on at that time.
Hulk. Yeah.
Right. Yep. So all of these directors, and as great as Wes is, you have all these directors that are just kind of making
Winging
it
it.
up as they go. Yeah, especially to do a comic book property, making it up as they go
Right.
along. And I feel,
Yeah.
you know, Wes being as great as he is, that he did a great job with this tonally wise, you know, because
Yes.
it's not for
Yes.
kids. And under a different
Yes.
director, it could have been way more campy and way more kiddie
Yeah.
and just immature. But I feel that
Yeah.
this movie was just the right level of maturity, you know, for the
Yeah.
time and for this character and the subject matter.
And you know
Yeah, I
what I
agree with you,
think's
man.
crazy is that
Mm.
like when I read this, how Wes didn't like think that after this film was released, well, he didn't work for 2 years after it was released, and he thought that this like
Mm,
blew his chance to like work again. So
Well,
yeah,
right.
I think it's crazy that he felt this way about this movie because I
yeah.
think
Yeah, I believe.
it's pretty good.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that is interesting that he thought that, you know, and you can understand why. I mean, because comic book movies back then weren't what they are today. I mean, obviously you had Superman, but nobody else was doing anything close to what, you know, Richard Donner did with Superman, or even Richard Lester with the sequel. You know, they kind of worked on it together, but that's a whole other story. We'll get to that some other day. But yeah, but real quick too, Gorphobe was saying that Wes is definitely in the small list of masters, and I do agree with
Yeah.
that. I really do.
Mhm.
He's had
Mhm.
such a great filmography. Definitely a master. And we got old school Shinobi in the chat. Hey,
Yeah,
welcome back. Welcome back. Huh?
well, no, just I didn't know that. I actually thought it was older than that. But
What, the
no,
movie?
just yeah, no, the comic. I thought Alan Moore's run was
Oh,
actually older than that. I thought it
oh,
was
okay. You were
80.
reading that. Oh, I
Sorry.
I didn't know what you're talking about. That's okay. Yeah, he was in the Swamp Thing film in 1982. Long predated the DC Vertigo era. Alan Moore didn't come onto Swamp Thing until a couple years later, and the Vertigo branding didn't hit until the later 80s. Okay. All right. Nice. Um, and let's see. Shinobi was saying also Swamp Thing was a member of the Justice League Dark, which had Constantine, Zatanna, and other darker characters. Yes.
Mhm.
Yep. I like Constantine. I really do. Let's see. And then but Swamp Thing Returns hit after Alan Moore and Swamp Thing run. Don't think that film was using Moore's influence though. I bet not. I bet not. That's funny. But yeah, Marty, I'll pass it to you. Did you want to throw out anything else?
Oh no. That's I was kind of shocked by that.
Yeah, absolutely. But now let's get into. I mean, obviously, once he becomes Swamp Thing, everything's kind of going back and forth in the swamp. And well, actually, Coriander, you were just speaking. I'll go to you, Marty. Um, what were you thinking of those parts? You know, basically, you know, Adrienne Barbeau is trying to run away from the goons, and Swamp Thing is there to save her a couple times. You know, what do you think of those sequences? Some of them were good, and to me anyway. Some of them were good. Some of them were a little
I
hokey.
admit the costume wasn't the best in certain scenes, and the light, like it was very brightly lit, and there was no real way to kind of trickery to hide that the costume was essentially a costume.
Right. I agree. I absolutely agree. Yeah,
You know, I bet if
it
they
had some
put more,
moments.
oh, yeah, I bet if they put more of the mossy spots, like, cause the stuff that he pulled off to put on Adrian's wound to heal her. I mean, if they put that in
Yes.
spots, that kind of would have hid, you know, that
Mm.
plastic look.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I totally, that's a
Yeah.
great point. I totally agree. Yeah, the costume definitely, like, you know, there was sometimes the costume looked pretty good. And like you were saying, Marty, sometimes it didn't. There were sometimes when he moved and you could kind of see how it bended,
Yeah.
you
It was
know?
rubbery.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, oh no, dude, don't do that,
But
you know?
that's like when Killian said it reminds you of the 50s movies, you know. It
Yes,
was
that's
yeah.
what I was gonna say.
Yep.
And someone
Yeah.
in the chat, yeah, someone in the chat was saying, you know, that's the word charm is what comes to mind. And yes,
Yes.
that's a great word for it. That it has a
Indeed.
charm to it.
Yep.
It really, really
Mhm.
does. But obviously, through the meat of the story, it's basically Adrienne Barbeau trying to get away from the
Yep.
goons that are led by Arcane, and we haven't even really talked about him yet. What did you guys think of him as the villain? Because he was funny as hell. Every time he was on screen, he was like doing some soliloquy or something, and I was just like,
he's a
"Oh,
cheese dog.
this." What?
I said he's a cheese dog. He's a cheese dog.
Cheese dog.
What's a cheese? A ladies' man. You know, he's like a cheese dog. You know what I mean? A ladies' man.
A cheese dog.
Yeah.
I never heard of that.
He was chewing up a lot of scenery.
Yeah, but let's back and Kill. I'll let you get to Arcane, but let's back up. Coriander, what does that mean though? How does cheese dog?
Just
dog
like
as in like, you know, he's
like
he's
a
a dog. That guy's a
because he
like,
referred
no,
at one point as like. Oh my god, I'm sorry. It's just a res term. I'm sorry.
Wait a minute, he referred to what? What were you gonna say?
Like a gigolo, you know. He talked about like women and how women at some point, I can't even remember how he quite said it, but he just reminds me of like someone who's been with a lot of young women, you know, like the chick he had with him. Cheese dog.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Kill. I'll get to you. What would you think about him as a villain?
He played that typical 80s comic book villain. He's chewing up a lot of scenery, maybe being a little too over the top and bombastic, but it still had a level of charm, you know. And I agree with Coriander. He stayed with some like young women, scantily clad, dressed like around him, having dinner parties, putting formula in your drink, and then just looking at you like, oh,
that was a great scene.
Yeah, just cold blooded, just like, oh, you're drinking it, you know, and just still acting so like nonchalant.
The guest of honor.
It's
like, wow.
Yeah.
So it seemed like that actor was having fun with it. So that's all.
Definitely. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We got David's horror in the chat, man. What's going on? Saying I thought his character was scarier before the transformation. Yeah, well,
right.
Yeah,
I thought that was funny too, like
that,
a hairy pig man. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that was. I don't know, man. That was Oh boy. And David said maybe not scarier, but creepier. Right.
All right.
Yep. I gotcha. Yeah. All right. So anyway, Marty, let's talk about that finale when he drinks the potion, when Arcane drinks the potion. And it's funny though, because Swamp Thing was explaining to him, because they obviously, and they had to capture Swamp Thing. You had to have that moment where, you know, the hero was in trouble. And of course they captured Cable as well, played by Adrienne. So that was like, you know, she's tied up too and all that type of stuff. And Swamp Thing was explaining that the potion basically makes you more of what you already are inside. So I guess like Coriander was saying, he's like some hairy pig animal or whatever. What'd you think about that?
I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're getting. It's essentially like a bad kaiju movie where like two guys in rubber suits slithering the shit out of each other.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It's funny, but I don't know.
It's kind of it's kind of silly, honestly. Because you
Coriander, if the Gorn from Star Trek turned up, I'd be like, fine, fuck it. We've got the Gorn now.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, you know, it's funny because, and I'll get to you in a second, Kill, but it's funny because it is silly. And as I was watching it, you know, but I had a smile on my face. Like I wasn't like totally disgusted or anything. So again, I think the charm really helped elevate it. And also because it's a comic book movie, that kind of shields it a little bit, just a little bit. Cause obviously you gotta, you gotta think of it as, but one thing I forgot to mention, and I'll throw it to you, Kill, is David has finally got his. And I gotta admit, man, that's a pretty gruesome kill. Like you could hear
loved it.
the bones being crunched and the blood was all the place. What'd you think of that kill? Because I mean, David Hess obviously, like I said, he was basically a bastard in this movie.
Yeah, he
Throughout the
earned
whole movie.
he earned that death.
Didn't he?
Yeah, and I
Didn't
mean,
he?
the effects of it, I thought were pretty darn good, and
Yeah,
you
that's what
just
I'm saying.
yeah, and you just love it when you have an actor who's playing a piece of crap, and they're going through the whole movie, and you're just sitting, you're just waiting, like, ooh, I can't wait for you to get it. You're on the edge of your seat, and then when it finally happens, you're like, yeah, all right,
It
all
delivered,
right.
man.
Right.
It did deliver.
Right. Patrick says Swamp Thing was way underpowered in this movie. Yeah, I mean, they definitely didn't have the money to do all the things that he could do. I mean, that now the streaming show, I mean, wow, man, they really went to town.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think
Damn.
they did a hell of a job with the special effects in that. I really thought so, man. Seriously. Mr. Dan was saying, hell yeah, bring in the Gorn and Man Thing too. Nice.
Bunch of lads just go around in a swamp in rubber costumes. Like,
making noises and shit. God, man.
Oh, come on, stop.
No, but I mean in a good way though. Like
it was,
Right.
yeah, it can't be
Yes.
kind of like, fuck it, we're having the crack. That's the kind of.
No, we all enjoyed it. Seriously, I told Kill, man, as soon as the movie started, I was like, man, I love these old school movies. Like you could just feel the old school flavor in it. You know what I'm saying? Right from the beginning. David says, I haven't seen this movie in ages. It's one I've been trying to find. It's one of my favorites from childhood. Yeah, man.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and actually, and I'll ask it in a second, but Patrick was saying Man Thing was Marvel's answer to Swamp Thing. Yes, it was. Yeah, absolutely. And for you guys, I don't know if either of you guys know or any of you guys know, but physically speaking, what's the best way to get it? I know that Scream Factory had a release or either just had one or is having one of it. Marty, do you know of any places to look?
I don't know. Some made me think Arrow fucking released a version of it, but I could be totally wrong.
Yeah. That'll be an interesting thing. Or anyone in the chat, if you know where you can find it easily, physically, that is. Yeah, let us know. It's not easy to find streaming. I do know that. You can rent it, but you can't purchase it. So, Shinobi says, I don't think Swamp Thing was the Earth Elemental yet in the continuity when this movie came out. All of that with the Parliament of Trees came later. Oh, well, that would make sense then. Yeah. Another fun fact, Man Thing actually predated Swamp Thing's premiere in the comics by 1 month, I believe. Wow. All right. Well, Marvel and DC were always trying to pick and peck at each other. Yeah, I mean, it's like one thing versus another. Aquaman, Submariner, The Flash, Quicksilver.
Slade Wilson, Wade Wilson.
Yeah, Deadshot,
Deadpool. Thanos, Darkseid.
Yeah.
Exactly. You could go on, and it's crazy how they've done that. And usually it turns out pretty good. Usually, there's been a few missteps, but anyways, but yeah, the ending of it was pretty. It was campy as hell, but it was good. The very ending, like Coriander was talking about earlier, I thought it was sweet. Like Coriander, and I'll throw it to you because you had mentioned it. What did you think about the very end of it when, like you said, she was kind of asking him, we could finish your work and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of sad. It was kind of sad because when she asked, like, we could work together, and he looks at his hands and he's like, with these hands, and she's like, I can be your hands. And it was like, that was like so sweet. And yeah, he should have, and he's like, you need to heal. It's like, heal? What the hell's he talking about? It's like, you should have just went off with her.
Well, it's called, they wanted to set up for the sequel. That's what that's called.
Yeah, he traded in Adrienne Barbeau for Heather Locklear.
Heather Locklear. Yeah. Well, real quick, we do have a couple of other facts for the movie and for also Adrienne Barbeau. I'll throw these up. And We've got one. Adrienne Barbeau
Yeah.
provided the voice of Catwoman in
Yeah.
Batman the Animated Series. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That is crazy. And I know that was one of your favorite cartoons back in the day, Kill.
Yes, definitely.
Catwoman was really cool in the cartoon.
Oh yeah.
One scene that Wes regretted having cut for budget reasons involved an underwater chase through flooded tunnels. Now that would have been cool to see. It's too bad that they had budget issues, because I think that would have been nice just to add something else, that was kind of fantastical into the movie. That would have been nice to have seen. I would have loved to have seen that. That's too bad. Arcane was neither the killer of the first or second Swamp Thing in the comic. Now that one I did not know. And Coriander, I think you found that fun fact, I believe, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Patrick was saying Man-Thing got a film in 2005. Yeah, and I didn't see that. Did you see that, Marty? Was it?
Shit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I hear you. And also the scene where Alice trips and falls twice while being chased prompted Craven's daughter to say sternly, "Dad, girls don't fall down when they run." That's funny.
Yeah, that is funny,
yeah,
especially
like
when they're
Wes,
falling and tripping over nothing. I hate those
Yeah, and
scenes.
that
It's
happened a
like,
few times.
yeah, it's like, what the hell, man?
Right. And that happened a few times. It's like, all right, come on now. It's like,
Right.
come on, man, seriously. But yeah, Wes Craven, the master right there on location, just chilling out. Gosh, he's so young there.
Yeah,
he was a master. He was a true master, and I'm glad that we're getting a chance to really dive into his filmography a little bit. And it's a vast one, and it's a variety of stuff, like we talked about on the Horror Icons episode. Real quick in the chat before we end up here, Shinobi was just saying, for example, Lynch cast Ray Wise as Leland Palmer in Twin Peaks as a result of him being in Craven's Swamp Thing. Aha, yeah. All right. Yeah, cool. That is very, very cool. Gorophobe says, I knew that one about Adrienne Barbeau. My fact knowledge is mainly movies and TV. You guys are too funny. They also used actors from Nightmare on Elm Street, People Under the Stairs, Scream, etc. Yeah, absolutely. They did try to use a lot of the same actors, revolving door. So that was cool.
Yeah.
David says, wasn't there a mini me Swamp Thing creature in the movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was the dude sitting at the table who, was the guest of honor.
He got turned into a pig.
Right.
He got turned into a little pig creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That was funny too. Patrick says, Corey Anders hot tips time. She doesn't have any other movies to throw out at us because we're just doing this one tonight, Patrick. Too funny, man. Shinobi says, did y'all ever hear about Wes Craven and David Lynch had a thing where they would cast actors in roles playing opposite the character types they played in others' movies? I'd never heard of that in particular. But that's cool, though. That's really, really cool. He said Craven and Lynch apparently had a big mutual appreciation thing going on. That's awesome, man, because they're great. They were great directors. Absolutely. That is very cool. All right. Well, guys, I think that'll be about it that we have for Swamp Thing. But definitely, especially for you guys that are in the chat tonight, feel free to leave us some comments with different fun facts, because there is a lot of stuff. I mean, Wes Craven's been doing stuff for so long, over 40 years or 50 years in the business. So there's so much good stuff. But definitely let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Please give this video a like. That'll really help us out. If you're not subscribed or resubscribed to us, the Nightwatch Zone, please do so. That would help us out as we continue our march to try to recalibrate. So, Marty, Coriander, Kill, thanks for joining tonight. This was fun talking about a cheesy, campy, charming 80s movie. That's what we're going to call it, man. So, anyways, guys, we will catch you guys next time. If you're watching us, if you listen to this, you are the Nightwatch. Peace out, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.